The moment Han Li stepped out of the cave, he felt it. Not wind, not cold, but a subtle pressure that seeped into his bones, as though the world itself had become hostile to living beings. The spiritual key around him was twisted beyond recognition, its currents colliding chaotically, whispering of destruction and ancient grudges long since buried. This was no ordinary land. It was a battlefield abandoned by time, where ancient cultivators had once shattered heaven and earth, and where the scars of that war still bled silently. Space itself was wounded here, torn open in invisible rifts that drifted like wandering blades, waiting for a single misstep. Only then did Han Li truly understand. This was the valley depths, and survival here was not a matter of strength, but of restraint. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. Under Han Li's focused gaze, the flying saber cleaved into the stone wall, erupting in a burst of blinding white radiance that flared like shattered starlight. In the next instant, Lu Weiying's expression subtly changed. With a flick of his hand, he recalled the saber. Han Li clearly saw that the strike had left behind only a shallow mark, scarcely an inch long. Around it, faint motes of silvery light drifted lazily like lingering sparks. That is, a trace of astonishment flashed across Lu Weiying's face. He hurried forward, leaning in to examine the mark more closely. After a long moment, he muttered under his breath, "Tail star silver. This cave, it's made of tail star silver ore." The moment those words were spoken, Han Li's expression changed drastically. He too stepped forward, extending a finger to gently brush against the slash mark. Fine dust clung to his fingertip, shimmering faintly. Han Li was naturally familiar with tail star silver. It was a rare material capable of greatly enhancing the durability of magic treasures, surpassed only by treasures as precious as refined crystal. It was no wonder Lu Weiying's strike had barely damaged it. Whether in the scattered star seas or the heavenly south continent, tail star silver was something that had all but vanished from the world. Han Li stared at the mark for a moment, then silently raised his hand. More than 10 small azure swords shot out from his sleeve, streaking forward like flashes of lightning and striking the stone wall head-on. The other two were startled, but quickly realized what Han Li was attempting. A sharp chorus of metallic clangs rang out. When the echoes faded, more than 10 holes each, several inches deep, had appeared in the wall, silver specks of light drifting out from each cavity. A brief look of surprise crossed Han Li's face as he spoke. It truly is tail star silver, and it's naturally mixed into the rock. Moreover, the distribution is uneven. This isn't man-made. There should be a tail star silver vein running through this place. Seeing that Han Li's swords had penetrated far deeper than Lu Weiying's saber, both men's expressions shifted. Lu Weiying in particular stared at the stone wall in silence, a faint trace of greed flickering deep within his eyes. A fiery gleam also surfaced on Marquis Nanlong's face, but after a brief moment of contemplation, he forcibly suppressed it and regained his composure. "Let's go," Marquis Nanlong said calmly. "We'll search for the treasures deeper within the valley first." Lu Weiying hesitated, his face filled with reluctance. "Go. Tail star silver is an incredibly valuable treasure. Wouldn't it be better to mine it out first?" Marquis Nanlong frowned and turned toward him, his voice dropping into a deep, steady tone. "Brother Lu, how can you be so short-sighted at a time like this? Did you not personally witness how resilient tail star silver is? Even if there truly is an entire vein here, a fist-sized chunk of ore would refine into only a minuscule amount of usable silver. How much time and magic power would you have to waste before it became worthwhile?" He paused, then continued solemnly, "Besides, no matter how precious this material may be, what we lack is not wealth, but resources to increase our cultivation and extend our lifespans. When our lives come to an end, what use will these possessions be then?" Lu Weiying froze for a moment before nodding repeatedly in realization. He clasped his hands toward Marquis Nanlong, gratitude evident on his face. "Brother Nanlong speaks truly. I was blinded by greed and lost sight of our true goal. Many thanks for waking me up. After that, he no longer spared the stone wall another glance, instead striding into the cave as if afraid he might be tempted again. Marquis Nanlong's expression relaxed. He called out to Han Li before following after Lu Weiying. Han Li too felt reluctant to part with the tail star silver ore, his steps unconsciously slowing. Even with auric essence-infused flying swords and ample spirit milk to replenish his magic power, extracting enough tail star silver would still be no simple task. Moreover, doing so would undoubtedly provoke the envy of the others. After weighing the matter, Han Li could only sigh inwardly and abandon the thought, following the two deeper into the cave. At that moment, a voice suddenly echoed within his mind. "Haha, so much tail star silver. I spent countless years searching for it and never managed to find any. Devil Fall Valley truly lives up to its reputation. This silver can be used in puppet refinement. Mix just a bit into a puppet's body, and ordinary magic treasures won't even be able to scratch it. You must take all of it." The monarch of soul divergence spoke with undisguised excitement. Han Li bluntly rebuked him. "Take all of it. Old eccentric, are you dreaming? This is tail star silver or not refined silver. How am I supposed to carry it all away? Chip it off piece by piece." The old man snorted. "Since I mentioned it, of course, there's a method. Youngster Han, don't you have those gold-devouring beetles? I can teach you a technique to control them, have them bore through the rock and consume the tail star silver. Afterward, they'll spit it out as crystallized silver." He added proudly, "This technique came from an insect cultivator I once killed. It works on all spirit insects, but it's especially suited to your gold-devouring beetles." Han Li's eyes brightened. "Then teach me immediately. I'll have the beetles search for the tail star silver at once." The monarch of soul divergence gave a cold laugh. "First, let me make one thing clear. No matter how much tail star silver you obtain, you must reserve enough for the final puppet I will refine. You are not allowed to waste it on other uses, especially on tempering your magic treasures. Only after I finish refining the puppet may you use whatever remains as you please." Han Li couldn't help but smile. "Senior may not know this, but my magic treasures have already been tempered with refined crystal. Its effects far surpass those of tail star silver." The old man fell silent for a moment before suddenly crying out in alarm. "Refined crystal? You possessed such a heaven-defying material. Do you have any left? Even a small amount would be of immense use to me." There was unmistakable delight in his voice. Han Li replied flatly, "You know I use a full set of flying swords. Although I obtained a sizable piece of refined crystal back then, it was barely enough to temper all of them. There's nothing left. Nothing left. What an utter waste." The old man's tone was thick with sorrow and regret. Hearing this, Han Li inwardly rolled his eyes. Using refined crystal on his own magic treasures could hardly be called a waste. However, since he still needed the old man's help, he wisely chose to pretend he hadn't heard the remark. By this point, Han Li had already followed the other two into the cave, deliberately maintaining some distance, whether intentionally or subconsciously, to avoid drawing attention. The cave was pitch black, but for cultivators this posed no problem. By channeling spiritual power into their eyes, they could see as clearly as day. The passage maintained the same width and height as the entrance, and the stone throughout was uniformly yellow. As they advanced, Han Li casually used one of his flying swords to scrape the wall. To his astonishment, silver specks of light immediately emerged. While walking, Han Li quietly learned the insect-controlling technique from the monarch of soul divergence. Though the incantation was obscure, composed of ancient characters with the old man's explanations, Han Li quickly grasped its essence. A moment of sudden enlightenment later, he was able to employ the technique smoothly. Once the technique had been transmitted, the old man fell silent again. Han Li pondered the incantation briefly to ensure its accuracy, then casually brushed his sleeve across his waist, producing a spirit beast pouch. A moment later, gold-devouring beetles silently flew out from his sleeve and dispersed into the passageway. With the other two more than 30 meters ahead, they remained completely unaware of his actions. By the time it would take to brew a cup of tea, the beetles had already vanished from sight. Han Li withdrew his sleeve and formed a hand seal. He silently recited the incantation in his mind, sending it through his spiritual sense toward the cave entrance, where a massive swarm of gold-devouring beetles had gathered. The beetles suddenly erupted in golden light. Their forms blurred, and in the blink of an eye, they tunneled straight into the stone walls without the slightest resistance. They vanished completely, leaving the rock's surface utterly unblemished. Sensing this through his spiritual sense, Han Li finally relaxed and quickened his pace. After walking for some time, they reached the beginning of a winding path. To Han Li's surprise, the other two had come to a halt. He quickly looked ahead and saw that the passage had abruptly doubled in width. The expansive space was filled with stalactites and stalagmites, each faintly releasing strands of silver light that illuminated the cavern. The silver lines were extraordinarily strange, though incorporeal. Each seemed to possess a distinct form of its own. Marquis Nanlong stared at the silvery radiance before him and let out a deep sigh. These must be the Great North Essence lights. Although the two of you may already know something about them, I must warn you once inside. Do not use any spiritual power or magic treasures other than the yin-yang ring. If the Great North Essence lights sense even the slightest leakage of spiritual power, we will undoubtedly die. Han Li remained silent. Without a word, he flicked his sleeve, summoning a jet-black ring. It spun once through the air before dropping neatly into his palm, a faint glimmer of light flashing across its surface. When Marquis Nanlong and Lu Weiying saw Han Li take out the yin-yang ring, their figures blurred as they instantly appeared close behind him, their expressions solemn and guarded. It was clear they intended for Han Li to take the lead. Han Li held the ring in his palm and gently blew a breath of azure essence qi onto it. A flicker of black light flashed as the qi was cleanly absorbed. The ring then floated upward, hovering motionlessly above Han Li's head. Raising his hand, Han Li struck the ring with a spell seal. The yin-yang ring trembled, its form rippling as it rapidly expanded, growing until it was nearly 20 meters across. Go! Han Li pointed forward and issued the command. With a strange resonant hum, the enormous ring surged ahead. Marquis Nanlong and Lu Weiying watched the scene unfold with grave expressions. As the massive ring encountered the countless silvery lines drifting through the air, something astonishing occurred. The lines of light rippled like disturbed water. The instant the yin-yang ring pressed forward, black light flared from its surface, forcibly distorting the silvery strands and pushing them aside, carving out a narrow passageway. Seeing this, all three couldn't help but exhale in relief. Yet Han Li's curiosity regarding the Great North Essence lights had not been fully satisfied. After a brief hesitation, he slapped his storage pouch and retrieved a fist-sized blue pearl, a top-grade defensive magic tool he had obtained long ago. Holding it in his hand, Han Li injected a trace of spiritual power. A brilliant blue barrier instantly surged outward, enveloping the pearl. With a flick of his wrist, he sent it flying forward. The moment the pearl entered the Great North Essence lights, the silvery lines swarmed toward it as if drawn by instinctive hunger. They pierced straight through the blue barrier from every direction, encountering no resistance whatsoever. A heartbeat later, silver sparks erupted. The pearl combusted soundlessly, dissolving into a fleeting, beautiful shimmer that quickly faded, leaving behind only the cold, drifting silver lines. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly. Marquis Nanlong and Lu Weiying both wore grim expressions. Han Li himself remained composed. He waved his hand and the enormous ring flew back, descending silently until it surrounded the three of them completely. A layer of black light then spread outward, forming a protective barrier that enveloped them on all sides. Let's go. With those words, Han Li stepped forward, guiding the yin-yang ring ahead of them. Marquis Nanlong and Lu Weiying dared not hesitate in the slightest. Staying close behind Han Li, they refrained from activating any additional defenses, fearing even the smallest provocation of the Great North Essence lights. Though Han Li appeared calm, a thread of unease still lingered in his heart. As expected, when the yin-yang ring entered the great north essence lights, the silvery strands parted obediently, retreating before the black barrier. Seeing this, Han Li finally felt reassured. Turning his head, he saw that the tension had also eased from his companions' faces. A faint smile crossed Han Li's lips as he continued forward at an unhurried pace. Elsewhere, within Devilfall Valley, in a region buried beneath snow and ice, a group of ghost spirit sect cultivators clad in black were locked in fierce combat with a gigantic lizard-like ancient beast. Hovering nearby was the pale-faced elder, surnamed Zhong, calmly floating in mid-air as he observed the battle below. His eyes were cold and detached as he watched the core formation cultivators struggle. After some time passed with no decisive outcome, Elder Zhong frowned and finally took action himself. He formed a hand seal, and countless strands of pitch-black qi poured forth from his body, rapidly condensing into a jet-black flood dragon. With overwhelming force, it charged straight toward the lizard. At the same time, a massive net of dark green light blossomed behind it, enveloping both the flood dragon and the beast. From within the net, innumerable fist-sized green fireballs condensed and rained down in a deafening barrage. Black light intertwined with emerald flames illuminating the frozen landscape before abruptly fading. When the brilliance dissipated, all that remained was a charred corpse. Elder Zhong flicked his sleeve. A fierce gale erupted, sending the ancient beast's body flying more than 30 meters away. Beneath it, a crack in the ice was revealed, leading downward into a passage suffused with faint white light. "Go," Elder Zhong commanded coldly. His figure blurred into black light as he shot into the passage. The ghost spirit sect cultivators followed without the slightest hesitation. Wang Chan and Yan Ruyan were among them, but Wang Tiangu and the ghost spirit sect master were nowhere to be seen. Soon the crack in the ice swallowed the entire group. Above-ground silence returned. Snow continued to fall, gradually encasing the ancient beast's corpse in ice until it became nothing more than an unremarkable mound. Back in the forest, the ghost spirit sect had previously passed through. Violet Spirit stood gazing at what appeared to be an inconspicuous mound of earth. After pondering quietly for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, she raised her head, scanning the towering trees around her. Then she lowered her gaze once more to the mound at her feet. With a casual flick of her finger, a streak of white light shot forward. A muffled pang echoed out as a 3-meter-wide pit exploded open. Grey ash scattered into the air, exposing damp earth and scorched tree roots beneath. A faint smile curved her lips. This should be it. The ghost spirit sect found it far quicker than I did, but they didn't expect anyone to trace their steps. They left in too much of a hurry. She waved her sleeve, and the pit refilled itself as if it had never existed. Taking out an azure talisman, she walked a slow circle around the nearby trees before affixing it to one of them. In a flash of azure light, the talisman sank into the tree and vanished without a trace. After confirming her direction, Violet Spirit rose into the air and flew off. Within a vast canyon, an old Taoist stood before a multicolored restriction, muttering to himself. Behind him, 2 fiendish-looking puppets stood motionless, their auras heavy and oppressive. At the far end of the canyon, a mass of crimson light flickered ceaselessly, one of the entrances to the valley depths. Though the passage itself was short, it was layered with several formidable ancient restrictions. Despite his profound skill in spell formations, even the old Taoist would need considerable time to dismantle them alone. Whether pressed for time or unwilling to seek another entrance, he hesitated while cautiously testing the restriction. Suddenly, a gloomy voice spoke from behind him. "What? Does Taoist Heaven Crystal feel that he cannot handle the restrictions alone? How about I lend a hand?" The old man was Taoist Heaven Crystal, the same individual who had exchanged soul stones with Han Li in Soaring Heavens City. As for the 2 fiendish puppets behind him, they were ancient constructs he had painstakingly repaired, each possessing the power of an early nascent soul cultivator. Taoist Heaven Crystal had once expended great effort merely to suppress one of them. With both now under his control, he had finally gathered the courage to enter Devilfall Valley. Startled, Taoist Heaven Crystal spun around. 200 meters behind him hovered several green-robed cultivators. The speaker was their leader, a man with long facial hair and a somber expression. Upon sensing their auras, Taoist Heaven Crystal's heart sank. Suppressing his shock, he forced a wry smile. So it is fellow Taoist dongmen of the controlling spirit sect. As for these others, are they elders of your sect as well? Dongmen Tu sect, master of the controlling spirit sect, glanced briefly at the two puppets before replying, "For now, you may consider them so. That said, the puppets behind you are quite extraordinary. Their power is not to be underestimated." Taoist Heaven Crystal replied cautiously, "Fellow Taoist Dongmen is too kind. How could such crude puppets catch your eye? Still, what is it you propose?" Dongmen Tu fixed him with a steady gaze. "Though I rarely leave my sect, I've long heard of your reputation as a master of spell formations. I've studied such arts myself, albeit shallowly. Alone, it would take either of us far too long to break these restrictions. Together, however, our chances improve greatly." Taoist Heaven Crystal frowned, still hesitant. Dongmen Tu's expression darkened slightly, though his tone remained patient. "What? Does fellow Taoist Heaven Crystal fear I will be a burden? How about this? Our cooperation will be limited strictly to dismantling the restrictions. Once inside, we part ways. I will not trouble you without cause." He paused, then added pointedly, "Even if you could break through alone, the time cost would be enormous. The true treasures lie in the valley depths. By the time you enter, they may already have been claimed. From what I know, this entrance has already been studied by other formation masters." Taoist Heaven Crystal's heart stirred. He glanced at the 5 green-robed cultivators behind Dongmen Tu, weighing the situation carefully. At last he nodded. "Very well, I accept. We will cooperate to break the restrictions, but once inside, we go our separate ways." Dongmen Tu immediately smiled. "Haha, excellent. Fellow Taoist Heaven Crystal may rest assured. With those 2 puppets at your side, how could I possibly force anything upon you? Once inside, we shall each rely on our own fortune." After surveying everything before him, Han Li couldn't help but wear a strange expression as he muttered to himself, "This is the valley depths." At the bottom of a sheer cliff, nearly 3 kilometers high, lay a small cave, the very one from which they had emerged. Not long ago, Marquis Nanlong and Lu Wei-ying stood side by side gazing upon the scene ahead, both wearing similarly peculiar expressions. Before them stretched an immense mountain range, peaks of varying heights rising and falling without end, extending as far as the eye could see. Even more astonishing was the world itself. Across sky and land alike, vast regions glowed with prismatic light. Some of these radiant zones spanned several kilometers, draping the heavens in shimmering color, while others were no more than a meter wide, their glow faint yet unmistakable. Though differing in size and brilliance, every one of them was breathtakingly beautiful. Yet what truly unsettled Han Li and the others was not the splendor of the lights, but the chaos of the spiritual sense, permeating the area. Regardless of attribute, all forms of spiritual qi were thoroughly entangled, clashing and intertwining without order. It filled the air with a suffocating unease, as though the very world itself might lash out violently at the slightest misstep. Marquis Nanlong took a deep breath and sighed before speaking. "This place truly is where ancient cultivators once fought. The worldly spiritual qi has been completely ruined here. As a result, any techniques we use will inevitably be affected." Han Li gave a wry smile and lifted his hand, pointing toward the sky. "That is only a secondary concern. That is what will be truly troublesome." Roughly a kilometer above them hovered more than 10 arcs of white light, each over a foot long, slowly drifting through the air. When Marquis Nanlong and Lu Wei-ying clearly saw what they were, their expressions changed drastically. Lu Wei-ying cried out in shock, "How can there be so many spatial tiers? And how can they wander?" Marquis Nanlong's expression also darkened. Noticing this, Han Li chuckled softly and said, "This is to be expected. Since this was the battlefield of ancient cultivators, the number of spatial tiers here should far exceed those outside. Otherwise, why would so many nascent soul cultivators enter the valley only to never return? From here on, we can only rely on Master Cancun's map. If we stray from the path even slightly—" "Brother Han speaks reasonably," Marquis Nanlong said after a moment. "We absolutely cannot risk leaving the path. Otherwise, we might stumble upon invisible spatial tiers. As for the visible wandering ones, as long as we remain vigilant, they should not pose too great a danger." With that, the Marquis gradually regained his composure. Lu Weiying, however, frowned deeply as he stared at another region dense with spatial tiers. After a moment of contemplation, he said uneasily, "The number of spatial tiers here is more than 10 times greater than outside. That reasoning only holds if the invisible spatial tiers truly remain motionless. If those invisible tiers also wander and scatter like the visible ones, then even Master Cancun's map might not be entirely safe." Han Li was startled upon hearing this. He immediately turned his head, azure light flashing brightly from his eyes as he gazed toward an area more than 300 meters away. There he discovered a faint, indistinct arc of light hovering silently in mid-air. After observing it for some time, he gradually calmed down. Just as Han Li was weighing whether he should reveal this discovery to the others, Marcus Nanlong hesitantly spoke, apparently mistaking Han Li's silence for worry. "There is no need for the two of you to be concerned. The invisible spatial tiers do not move. Master Cancun clearly recorded this." Lu Weiying's spirits lifted, though suspicion still lingered in his eyes. Is Brother Nanlong certain? How did Master Cancun come to know such a thing? Marquis Nanlong looked at the two calmly and replied, "Brother Lu should remember that Master Cancun once suffered grievous injuries. The real question is, how was he able to safely leave Devilfall Valley in such a state? He relied on a cultivation technique that allowed him to sense the locations of spatial tiers. Otherwise, how could he have escaped with his life?" Hearing this, Lu Weiying felt a wave of relief wash over him. So such techniques truly exist. In that case, Master Cancun's escape was no matter of luck. Han Li's expression also softened, and he quietly let out a breath of relief. Seeing this, Marcus Nanlong's lingering concern finally dissipated. He had feared that his two companions might consider retreating, especially Han Li, whose thoughts were always difficult to discern, since Han Li would be the key force in confronting the ancient flame toad. Persuading him to continue forward was crucial. With a resolute expression, Marquis Nanlong said, "Let us proceed. According to the records, we cannot fly too quickly. It should take roughly a full day to reach the ancient flame toad's nest. Remain cautious along the way." Han Li gave a faint smile. Fellow Taoist Nanlong should focus on his own safety. Fellow Taoist Lu and I will naturally take care of ourselves. Lu Weiying nodded in agreement. Satisfied, Marquis Nanlong said, "Then let us depart. We've already wasted enough time." He adjusted his bearings, wrapped himself in a sphere of light, and slowly flew forward. Han Li and Lu Weiying exchanged a glance before also taking to the air, following closely behind without deviating in the slightest. Even straying a few meters off course could mean blundering into a spatial tear or an ancient restriction. As such, the three were exceedingly cautious. The path they followed was bizarre beyond expectation. At times it ran straight, while at others it curved into wide loops or even full circles. Regardless, they stopped every 2 hours to carefully verify their position before continuing onward. Throughout the journey, Marcus Nanlong never once consulted a jade slip. It was clear he had already memorized the route thoroughly. Han Li maintained a neutral expression, but inwardly he was memorizing every step of the path in reverse. Should anything unexpected occur, he needed a route to escape with his life. He suspected Lu Weiying was doing the same. After all, cultivators who had mastered the basic elemental arts possessed perfect memory. Remembering directions required no effort at all. They flew for nearly an entire day without encountering any danger. Gradually, Han Li felt more at ease, believing that Marquis Nanlong truly possessed the authentic route Master Cancun had once taken through Devilfall Valley. As he followed behind, Han Li continuously scanned his surroundings with his spiritual sense. Along the way, he detected at least 4 areas protected by formidable ancient restrictions. There were also several anomalous regions whose nature he couldn't discern, whether they were spell formations or natural abnormalities born of distorted spiritual ki. Han Li was keenly aware that such places likely concealed relics left behind by ancient cultivators. Though curiosity stirred within him, he firmly restrained himself. While he possessed some understanding of ancient restrictions, he knew all too well how terrifying they could be. Only spatial tears posed a greater threat. Even with his bright-sight spirit eyes, there was still a significant risk of inadvertently triggering a devastating formation. At this stage, ordinary ancient treasures no longer tempted him. So long as he obtained the core of the ancient flame toad, the ancient cultivators remains the spirit kindle fruit. And the tail star silver, his gains would already be immense. After weighing the risks and rewards, Han Li decisively abandoned any reckless intentions. His gaze drifted to Lu Wei-ying. The old man's expression was dark and tense, and from time to time he glanced into the distance. Han Li sighed inwardly. If Lu Wei-ying failed to obtain what he sought from the ancient cultivator's remains, he would likely be forced to continue searching deeper within the valley. It wasn't greed, it was desperation. Han Li understood this all too well. If his own lifespan were nearing its end, he too would gamble everything. After all, success meant prolonged life and further advancement in cultivation. As these thoughts passed through his mind, a faint trace of sorrow surfaced within him. At that moment, Marquis Nanlong suddenly came to a halt, staring at the area ahead with a wavering expression. Han Li frowned, a sense of foreboding rising within his chest. He quickly scanned the surroundings before fixing his gaze on Marquis Nanlong's back in silence. Below them lay a small, utterly unremarkable mountain, barely 300 meters tall. Beyond it rose a towering mountain range. It had been said that reaching the ancient flame toad's nest would require a full day of travel, but they clearly hadn't flown long enough. This was not their destination. Lu Wei-ying was bewildered by the sudden stop. "Brother Nanlong, what's wrong? Why have we stopped?" Marquis Nanlong slowly turned to face them. A bitter smile crossed his face as he said, "It seems we've encountered a complication. We may need to brave a bit of danger." Lu Wei-ying froze. "What do you mean, Brother Nanlong?" Han Li rubbed the bridge of his nose, remaining silent, though curiosity flickered in his eyes. "Fellow Taoists," Marquis Nanlong said gravely, pointing into the distance, "do you see those 2 mountains? They stood remarkably similar to one another, like mirrored silhouettes." Of course, Lu Wei-ying replied in surprise. "Does the problem have something to do with them?" "Precisely," Marquis Nanlong answered with absolute certainty. That's all for today's content. See you in the next part. Support me by becoming a member. It will give me more motivation. Thank you so much.